What usually leads to getting a diagnosis is that a teacher or professional or service agent will see a kid acting kind of weird or just being antisocial, but they're still intelligent. So then they'll recommend getting the kid tested. And usually this happens at elementary school age, but some people are able to adapt and blend in, so then they're not figuring out what's wrong with them until their teenage years or adulthood. Alex Plank uses the wrong planet syndrome to describe this experience, because it's like people on the spectrum are from a different planet, so then when they're here, the normal society rules and stuff don't come naturally to them. They might be able to pick up social cues slowly, but it's like trying to assemble a puzzle without having a picture on the box. And then as they assemble the puzzle as they get older, then the signs of having autism start to disappear.
It differs from clinician to clinician. If you're asked what my process is, it's interesting because there are certain things that I would notice in people that make my antennas go up about, whether this person is an Asper or not, and it begins to raise questions for me to ask other questions. Like the second question was like, how do you get along with other people? How many friends do you have? And what do they think about you? And getting into that social interaction part. As I mentioned before, it's the most prominent part of having Asperger's. And so then we moved on to other things. I'll have an AQ, which was put out by Simon, Barry, and Cohen, a list of questionnaires, about 50 questions, true or false, to see how your thinking and your interactions fall along the lines of people who have Asperger's. I've done that with young adults, and then go to the diagnostic manual and look at the language delays, interesting use of communication, repetitive behaviors, the stacking things, as I said before, the social deficits.
I believe that getting a professional diagnosis is important, and the earlier the better, because it gives you a starting point.
We put off for a year getting him any kind of a diagnosis because we didn't want him labeled. And to us, the label thing sounded like a negative thing, and it turned out that you really kind of need that label, because the label, it's like you have a map and you don't know where you are on this map, and the label is sort of like the "you are here" point.
There's a danger of people who declare they have Asperger's just because with the information age, people can just look up, oh, I match these symptoms, I have Asperger's, and then they use it as an excuse to act like a jerk. And this is bad because it devalues and dishonors the people that actually have Asperger's. Paul actually had some trouble getting a professional diagnosis because of his familiarity with Asperger's.
The psychologist that I was working with at the time, he wrote down that I have Asperger's, and he wrote down that his diagnosis of me having Asperger's is in conjunction with Paul's self-diagnosis, being that I'm a therapist as well. And that became a problem when people would want to authenticize and definitely validate that I'm on the spectrum. And it says, well, you're a psychotherapist, and you know the characteristics, you're working out a diagnostics manual, and you are creating this for yourself for whatever gain or whatever manipulation, and that can become a problem unless you're really working with a accredited psychologist who has the experience and the all of the licensure to actually give you the diagnosis. But what you have nowadays, and this is the information age, which is a whole other topic, but living in the information age, you have access to so much information. And when people, when word of mouth comes about, they'll say Asperger's, what is Asperger's? You go on the internet, and there are several sites about what that is, and you look it up and says, oh, this looks like me, oh, this looks like me, I have Asperger's, because you're going on site or you're taking a self-assessment and says, well, I score high enough or I pass on what looks like Asperger's. And so you have a certain population. And I know that some people in my group who come in and who have labeled themselves as having Asperger's without having actually gotten a full diagnosis from a psychologist. That's an issue sometimes. For me, if a person thinks that they have Asperger's and they are coming to group and they can identify with, and more importantly, we identify with that person and we can validate, this person is one of us. It doesn't matter to me whether they've gotten the actual valid diagnosis or not. But if it comes to finding work, going to certain programs, Social Security, certification, et cetera, then they're going to look for more than just a self-diagnosis.
Once you have a diagnosis, who do you tell? I like to use a need-to-know strategy, as in, I need to know you first. Or basically, you need to have a reason to know. So if you tell people, like a parent or a teacher or someone who can help by being aware that you have this problem, and then they can make your life easier because of that. If you're in a conversation with like a close friend or a family member and it comes up, then you can feel free to diagnose or disclose or not. It can help people understand you. People have some pretty crazy ideas about Asperger's.
One of the reasons why I want to be anonymous is because I'm afraid of what people would think of me if they found out if I have Asperger's. If it's my friends that found out I have Asperger's, I'm fine with it. But when it comes to potential employers, how they would think, that frightens me. If they're unfamiliar with Asperger's, they're gonna be like, oh, she has a mental disability, we can't hire her.